reacting to the article of Indian policy, one of the questions that was on the bottom is how would you explain the depth of hostility felt by many white Americans towards the Indians? From my knowledge and what I read from the article, they were treated really horrible, such as in the first paragraph it had mentioned. Going over the battleground the next day, I did not see a body of man, woman, or child was scalped, and in many instances, their bodies were mutilated in the most horrible manner. I believe that is something that is so horrible that should never occur and should never done to another individual, no matter what race, cultural preference, or whatever. And especially during that time, I feel like they thought it was the right thing to do since they wanted to take control over the territory of the Indians. In the second paragraph in Sitting Bull 1883, it had mentioned, and he told me not to step aside from the white man's path and do my best to travel in that path. I sit here and look around me now, and I see many people starving. We want to cattle to butcher. So what I get from that is that Indians are starving. They have nowhere to go. Americans are forcing them to turn into Christianity. They want them to have the same beliefs as them, and they want the Indians to forget about their whole culture, which is something that should occur, since if the Indians have their own cultural routines or rituals, they should be allowed to do it, and no one should come, especially Americans, and tell them what to do or what not to do. As well as, I felt like the government didn't do a really good job during that time. If they really did wanted that land that the Indians were on, they should have had found a more decent way how to do it, since they weren't there first. The Indians had already settled there, and each tribe had their own locations and whatever, and they decided to pick away that land that was theirs. And the second question was, what is the goal of the Dawes plans? Do you approve or disapprove? Why? After doing some research, and getting a better understanding, was basically treating the Native Americans as individuals rather than members of tribes, and in a way trying to help the Indians have a better lifestyle, have their own piece of land. I believe that it was a good idea by the meaning of it all. Like, they're gonna help the Indians in order for them to prosper, since they were taking their land, and now they're giving them a piece of land. But after doing some more further research, that act somewhat failed, or totally failed, I would say, was because they were giving them lands where they weren't able to plant and succeed. And what's the point of having a piece of land if you're unable to make a living out of it? And especially during those times, since the Indians would plant their food, such as corn, and if they're not able to get food, they're gonna be starving to death. Let's see. It had also mentioned, I refer, of course, to the policy of dealing with the various Indian tribes as separate nationalities, of relegating them by treaty stipulations to the occupancy of immense reservations in the West, and encouraging them to live a savage life, and distributed to an earnest and well decided efforts to bring them under the influence of civilization. So what I'm getting from this is, even though they're trying to help the Indians and have their own lifestyle, they're still trying to find a way and how to civilize them. And uh, no, if they don't want to be civilized, then they shouldn't be civilized. And if it's in them, like, oh, I want to change my lifestyle, then it's all right. But if they don't want to, why force them onto something that they don't want? If they've been having their, as they mention it, a savage, where is it at? A savage life. I wouldn't consider it a savage life. I would just consider it a way of living, and that's their way of living. And overall, my whole thought about this is Americans, until now, I would say they don't treat them as fairly. They do have their own reservations, but they had a huge amount of lands, and now they're only entitled to some pieces of land. I would totally be upset and mad, since my family members died because of them. They starved to death, and that's something that's unforgettable. And that's about it. I'm pretty sure I covered everything. Check. Yeah, thank you very much.